Greetings, my name is Michael Fackrell, and today we're going to tackle a very interesting question that's been raised by a lot of people on the internet and over the years. And it's been something that's been used by atheists and skeptics and God haters generally to kind of discredit, if they can, the God of the Bible. They want to make out that our God is a tyrant, a wicked, cruel despot, somebody that's not worthy of serious consideration as being a righteous and a good God. And the reason that they make these assertions in part is based on the record of the Old Testament concerning God's commandment for the Israelites to destroy all the Canaanites. And I'll read from the passage which gives this command, and you'll see it for yourself. When the Lord your God brings you into the land which you go to possess, and has cast out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy to them, nor shall you make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to their son, nor take their daughter for your son, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Lord will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. But thus you shall deal with them. You shall destroy their altars and break down their sacred pillars and cut down their wooden images and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples on the face of the earth. Well, how about that? Go and utterly destroy the Canaanites. Don't make any covenant with them. Don't show them any mercy. Kill their women, their children, everything. What do we make of this? This sounds offensive to some of our moral sensibilities, especially in our Western culture. We don't think that a righteous God would do that, perhaps. But I want to point out a few things for you to consider. Number one is, God, by virtue of the fact that he is the creator and the lawgiver, he has the authority to set laws, and he has the authority to execute judgment on the peoples of the earth. And he makes no apologies for doing that. Now, you may not like his judgment. You may think that it's undemocratic or it's unfair. But I'll tell you something. You didn't create the world. You didn't create your own brain. You didn't create the breath that you breathe, the water you drink, or the food you eat. You didn't design any of that. You didn't provide any of those things. Who are you? Our God gave us all good things to enjoy, gave us air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat, gave us brains to think with, and he gave us certain moral laws for the good ordering of society. And chief among them is, you shall have no other gods before me. That is, God demands the worship and respect that is his alone by virtue of the fact that he has created the world. And we owe everything to him on that account alone. Now, what had happened in the history of humanity, of course, was that from the days of Adam and Eve, people had turned away from the living God to listen to the voice of evil spirits. And the first recorded incident of this, of course, is in Genesis chapter 3, where the snake comes and tempts Eve and Adam to take from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, representing, of course, the right to choose for yourself, the right to make your own decisions and make your own laws. And I guess people partake of that tree in one way or another, even today. Whenever anybody says, I've got the right to make the laws, I've got the right to choose my own way, and I don't need God to tell me the way I should live, they are making the same kind of choice as Adam and Eve did when they took the fruit from the tree. It's a decision to be independent, to reject God, to reject his authority. But God had warned, on the day you do this, you'll surely die. And they did die spiritually, and later they died physically. Since that time, humanity, all the descendants of Adam and Eve, have been afflicted with a tendency and a predisposition towards rebellion and towards going after the independent knowledge of good and evil, rejecting the ways of the Lord. And they've also followed demon gods. Now, this is what these Amorites and Canaanites were into. They were worshipping demon gods. They were really, really satanic. And it's actually interesting, in the book of Genesis, God talks to Abraham, his friend, and says that my people, your descendants, will be in Egypt for 400 years, and after that I'll take them out, because the iniquity of the Amorites, the Canaanites, is not yet complete. In other words, they were wicked, but not wicked enough for God to consider that it was time to wipe them out, to destroy them. Now, as I said, God, being the lawgiver and judge, has the right to execute judgment. God is not subject to the same categories as we are, because we are creatures, He is the creator. Just as the same standards do not apply to the judge in a court of law and the defendant in a court of law, so it is even more so with God and people. See, if the judge commands that a person be put to death, the judge is not guilty of murder. Likewise, if God commands capital punishment, that a person or group of people be put to death, God is not a murderous God. He's executing justice and righteousness. And there's nobody better qualified to know what justice and righteousness is than God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. If there's no God at all, then it doesn't make sense to talk about right and wrong. Right and wrong are just matters of personal preference, personal opinion. You may like to be sweet and nice, and someone else might like to kill Jews in the interest of the evolution of the species. Well, who are you to say that your opinion is better than theirs? It's just a matter of personal taste, personal preference, if there's no God. If there's no God to say what's right and what's wrong, then it's just different human beings with different opinions, and might makes right. When you say, this is not right what God is doing, you're acknowledging that such a thing as right and wrong exists. That is not consistent with the position of atheism. You might wish to take the Gnostic approach and say that there's another God, not Jehovah God, who's above Jehovah God, and he's righteous or she's righteous, and the God of the Bible isn't righteous. But you can't say there's no God, and yet there is morality. We need to look at it very carefully. It's not logical. Now, the Christian position is that the God of the Old Testament is the same God that Jesus Christ referred to as his Father. Actually, we see that God is very patient. He waited 400 years to execute these people, to do the capital punishment on them for their abominable sins. And I mean, there was one of them that escaped. The most righteous person God could find in that whole city of Jericho was a prostitute. Imagine how all the others were. But that prostitute had faith in God Almighty, and because of that faith, she was saved and rescued.